Howdy y'all, I'm back again with some more tips on making the most of what you've got. So these are going to be this is a part 2 of this little series I'm doing, and this will be about extending the food that you have in your pantry and your fridge right now and making it last as long as possible. So in the previous video we covered eating less and eating less often, using your perishables first. So preserving eggs, extending your milk, and freezing bread and thawing it properly. Thinking of meat in a different way and using it more as an ingredient or even as a condiment instead of the main deal. Using a saver bowl for ground beef. So every time you make ground beef, you save a little bit of it so you can have an extra meal. And using your drippings so that you can extend your vegetable oil or cooking shortening or olive oil or whatever it is you're cooking with. Be sure and take advantage of the drippings, the rendered fat from your meat sources. So this time we're going to talk about a few other things, starting with pot liquor. So this, I think, is a regional term, and so I'll explain what pot liquor is. Pot liquor is the juice that's left over after you cook something really good. So let's say you make a big pot of pinto beans or black-eyed peas, and you've eaten all of the beans and meat and goody out of there, and you've still got a couple of inches of good juice in the bottom, but there's nothing in there but juice. That's pot liquor. You can have pot liquor from any kind of good big pot of something like soup or stew or beans or anything like that, even chicken and dumplings, anything that has a juicy, good 2 or 3 cups of juice left over, that's pot liquor. You shouldn't throw that out. You can make some good stuff out of pot liquor. So if you've got that left over and it's warm on the stove, throw in a cup of cornmeal and let it sit overnight. You know, let it come down to room temperature and put it in the fridge, mix it up real good, and let it sit there overnight. The next day you'll find that it's made kind of a thick batter. If it's not quite thick enough, you can add a little more cornmeal or crushed flour, crackers, you know, crush up crackers, but cracker crumbs, something like that to thicken it. And you pat out little patties. Say it was pinto bean pot liquor, and you put some cornmeal in there. When it swells up and gets thick, you can pat out little patties, and then you can, remember, we're saving our drippings, so you use your rendered fat from some other meat and you fry that patty, that pot liquor and cornmeal patty in that rendered fat, and you can make a good mess of those. You can make like 12 good size hoe cakes out of that pot liquor and cornmeal. So there you are, there's a whole meal for a full-size family, a family of 5 or 6 can eat. Everybody can have like 2 of those, and that's from nothing. That's just the juice you were going to throw off and a cup of cornmeal and a little bit of fat you was going to throw off. Save that juice, save that fat, and all you need is a cup of cornmeal and a little salt, and you've got a big steaming hot pile of delicious crispy hoe cakes. So remember that, and don't throw out your pot liquor, because you can make something. Don't throw out anything. Like, try not to waste anything at all. Okay, portion control is very important during hard times. Let's say you've got 3 or 4 kids you're going to feed, plus yourself and your spouse, and you have a limited amount of food. Don't just, or in my opinion, I don't just put everything on the table and let everybody serve theirself. I will put out 4 or 5 plates over by the stove, and I will portion everything out, and then I will hand each person their plate. And that way I know that everybody got a decent portion of everything, and to make it go as far as possible. So if your family has different nutritional needs, you'll have to adjust for that. But in my opinion, it goes a lot farther if you dish it up yourself instead of letting everybody just get what they want. Okay, so when you're having trouble making enough big meal to satisfy everybody, say you've got a lot of people to feed, you can consider having a soup course or a bread course before the main meal. So you can take a can of soup, and they don't have to have a bowl of soup. It can be a cup of soup. So you can take just a can of condensed soup, whatever kind they like, and add a little extra water to it. Or you can make bouillon, or you can use a little chili that's left over from last night, or you can, any kind of soup or something like that. And give everybody a cup of soup and like 5 or 6 crackers to start. And that'll put something in their stomach, that'll warm their tummies up, and that's a good appetizer, and it's very inexpensive. So if you give everybody a cup of soup, if soup's not the thing, if you don't have any, or they don't like it or whatever, try a bread course. Make a pan of biscuits and serve it with a little jam or marmalade. Make a pan of cornbread and serve it with some butter or honey. Give everybody a little bite of something before you begin. And that way the actual meal doesn't have to be as big. Everybody will be more satisfied with much smaller portions if they've had that little cup of soup or piece of hot cornbread before they have their dinner. I wanted to say I keep a container of chicken bouillon, and that you can use that as the soup course. And there's really nothing to it. It's just hot water. But if you fix it a little strong and give everybody a cup of piping hot, delicious chicken bouillon with about a half a dozen saltines with it, that is a good start for a meal, and it will make your small portion sizes much more satisfying for your family. So I want to stress that you want to use everything and not waste anything. So one of the ways that you can do this is by using a rubber spatula. Rubber spatulas are great for conserving and saving and getting that very last bit. If you have a long skinny rubber spatula, you can really clean out those jars of mayonnaise or peanut butter or whatever. And if you get all of it off of there, that's a whole nother serving, perhaps 2 servings. So that will extend your condiments if you get a really good. And whenever you mix something up, use a rubber spatula. If you're going to make muffins or something, be sure and always scrape your bowl down with a rubber spatula and get every last bit of that, because we want to take advantage of all of the stuff that we're cooking. Also, I would suggest that you plant a tomato plant. Tomato plants are pretty easy to grow. Most of them, they've got the hybrids now that are pretty easy to grow. And most people, even if you live in an apartment or something, you can usually stick a pot on the balcony. They even have the self-watering kind. So they're pretty easy to grow, and a tomato plant, it'll just keep on giving. And if you have a few tomatoes, you can really do a lot of different things with that. If you've got a little bit of pasta or a little bit of rice, and maybe you've got your savor bowl with some ground beef in it, you're able to fix a really big, nice meal with just some tomatoes and a little pasta or a little rice. So I would suggest planting a tomato plant or 2. I'm going to. I didn't intend to before, these hard times hit, food shortages and such, but I'm going to now. I was going to work on my flower garden, but I'm going to do a vegetable garden instead. And so that's some of my suggestions, and I don't really know everything I know until I get in there and I get to doing, and I remember, because I've cooked and served food this way most of my life, but recently I've been low carb, and when you're low carb, you really change the way you look at food completely. So I'm having to kind of remember all my little tips and tricks and hints. So I want to share what I know with y'all, and I'd like to hear what you know. We need to tell each other all this stuff. We need to help each other, share our information. How can we make what we have last as long as possible, and different ways to, stretch our budget, shop wisely, trying not to, stock up or hoard supplies, but just feeling like we have more food security because we understand our food better and our nutritional requirements. We're not overeating or eating too much, eating out of boredom. We just need to think about our food as a fuel for our bodies and not snacks, and not really eat for flavor and not eat for taste. But, you know, we want food that tastes good. That's not what I mean. But we want to eat because we need to fuel our bodies. We need to give ourselves nutrition. And we need to take care of ourselves and be strong and healthy. Not because we really want something sweet. Or, dang, I really want something salty. You know, the cravings and stuff usually indicate that you're needing something in your diet. So possibly take a multivitamin and get a little more water instead of snacking. And so that's it for right now. This is the notes I've had so far, and I'll think on it. I've got a few ideas for non-food tips, like how to make your detergents and soaps last longer and different things like that. And so I'll share those with you. And thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Until then, y'all be sweet.